let's say the life is about making sense of everything at each moment. So in each moment, such as if the stone is falling onto your head, you want to respond to that. That's how to make sense of it. And if there's a problem with the house, the window is broken and the storm is coming, that may be the main concern. And if you're young and trying to figure out the future to find the mate, a girlfriend, whatever the case is, may be more important, but maybe not as important as having a good health, if that's more imminent. So depending on the situation, how we respond to the need at the time may be different. And we can use the brain so that we have a logic to respond instead of just blindly responding. But the logic can be tricky because if we put too much emphasis in certain logic, then the rest may fade away. The logic comes first, and the certain logic in the limited area, only applied in the limited area, may not look at the whole picture. So we accumulate various logics and the concept and all that, but we have to have the ability, the executive function, if you call that, to kind of pull those things together. But logic itself is not everything, because there are lots of memories with the various experiences. Some are good, some are bad. And those things may not fit into the logic as we learn from the school. So we expand the nature of the logic much more than what we learn, not in the biology department or business or the law, whatever you want to study. That's only a portion of it. So at the end, to live well with various logic, we have to sort of integrate and synthesize all those things so that the whole process makes sense, making sense of life, aligned to what we want to do. So when I talk about making sense at each moment, I tend to think that's more of a way that the nature would put us to live on this earth. What does it mean? It means that from the beginning of the cell's development, it's about life. How to make life to be long-lasting, it's one of the meaningful things to do. And when you make the life long-lasting, you don't want to create lots of torturous situations. So that's where our learning, the experience, and the logic would fit well. So when something happens, it's stupid to repeat the same thing to happen for us to suffer. So those are the reference points and the learning we have to go through. I tend to use the word PDCA, CAPD, plan, do, check, act, and check, act, plan, do. Starting from check is better than planning without any understanding of what's going on. So CAPD is more correct way I look at, but the people often use the word PDCA. So essentially, you have to keep continuing this process of learning from the childhood to learn how to walk and or stand and walk and run, whatever, or how to not touch the hot plate, or how to obey to the parents' word if that makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't, but if you don't have any judgment, you may start from just obeying and gradually develop your own sense. So the period of growth is the process of PDCA, CAPD, gathering all the information, put in place and learn from that. Along with it, we have the logic and disciplines and concepts we accumulate. Sometimes those just walk by itself. You believe what they say is right. And often, maybe this is not a good example, but appropriate here, is that on TV there's a marketing or internet, any place. So they try to attract you by showing some wonderful woman or whatever the trick that they can use, so that you want to go to the nice tropical island with the beautiful woman on the boat and everything taken care. That may sounds good and appeal to certain part of our brain and our existence, and also connected to the reference point. But we need to be careful about those kind of like fake references that is not substantiated in your reference point as the basis of your experiential wisdom. But it's the name of the game of how to attract and sell the idea, and we benefit from such marketing ideas in our history. So you cannot argue with people sharing of the good experience and sharing with others, so that the promoting the idea may be also good for the human being, the society. Sometimes not for the environment, because we've seen this climate change. So we have to be not just blinded by looking at the one logic, one marketing idea, one thought, one experience, and extrapolate from there that we follow that. And if we go just follow, depending upon those stimuli, we're like going this way, going that way, without going through this PDCA, CAPD process to kind of synthesize every now and then to resolve if there's any conflict or lack of logic or bottleneck that hamper us from looking at the whole picture. So when I talk about the calm and quiet mind, basically that's the way to kind of settle the whole picture in terms of your mind, body, or heart included. And then you have this calm and quiet mind. And I said, do nothing but just accept. And the meaning of that is, well, you need to experience this, but the meaning of that, if I may say so, is make sense of what we've got. What does it mean? In that process, you may, as you are in this calm and quiet mind and do nothing, do no thinking, then things pops up, as if from the subconscious or consciousness. And then you get drawn into it. It's like a marketing program, or maybe the sad experience from the past will pop up, and you get drawn to it. That's natural, because those issues, the experience had impact on you. But if we just keeping on living without reflecting and having a calm and quiet mind, you may not have those experience in a way settled in your brain or mind and body system. So they may start to work on its own, and that's kind of natural, because there's some need for that to be processed but not resolved totally. So we have to go through this, what I may call the synthesization process, where we remain calm and quiet, no thinking. Let the thing to resolve on its own. It's kind of like a self-organizing process of the nature. When we are born and raised, before even getting to using the consciousness, whole process is also driven by the nature's way to, respond to the stimuli and try to make the best of it. And we have gone through ages and ages, generation to generation, through that, and developed this DNA, and the chain of the DNA may be, getting longer and longer as more complex and difficult situation may pop up, or as you conquer some difficulty, then next issue may pop up. So the whole process of this making sense to live, it's kind of like living better, given the situation, would be depending upon how we synthesize, get all the information and data point and references and concept and everything put together and find the passage. So in my imagination, what this looks like is like using the artificial intelligence example. We have lots of data point, and there may be certain logic developed, and we want to develop a fairly strong sort of like a nerve system, so that we don't just jump around from this branch A to B to C or respond to the stimuli of X, Y, Z, but there's some principal way to process it. It's like a tree growing and becoming bigger and very strong and have foundation. so that the tree can resist or go through this dry summer or strong wind or no rain. So all the experience, logic, and everything need to be settled. And tree has its own intelligence to do that, to come up with a solution. Some are successful, some are not successful, but over generations of their processes, things start to prevail. Some may not work well. And the human does the same thing, in my view, and each individual would do the same thing. So what does that mean? The point is that when we have all the information, the concept and the reference point and sadness and the pleasure and everything existing in your memory as references, we want sort of let the experience and the nature to prevail such that we have some response mechanism. It's kind of like preparing for the virus coming from different angle, that you can have the antibody or some kind of a protection mechanism or principal way to address, so that your future will be better. So how it happens is quite interesting, and maybe lots of people studied about it. And I'm not going into the detail of it, but there are various let me talk about it. In Buddhism, I study lots of sutras, also Christianity and Hindu and Sufi and stuff like that. And what I found is that there are various ways to describe the situation, and each of them looks good, but we also need to synthesize what it means in our own existence. So over time, because the study takes time and experience and PDCA process takes time to synthesize and move on and keep on doing, that's the growth. If we see that, it is the wisdom that we need to develop from all of those experiences. Of course, we cannot experience everything, but we can still study and learn and relate to that. And then what should come out of it is a certain principle way that we can live accordingly, so that we can become more resilient to the difficulty and the hurdles, but also feel, I don't know if the happiness is the right word, calm and quiet and lively. And that connection of that, the inspiration to find the passage into the future, given the circumstance, is in a way very life, how do you call it? Life promoting, very positive experience. If I use some examples, or one example it popped up in my mind is that when you watch a wonderful movie and you are shaken or your body is vibrating and connecting to the message there, that's when this synthesization may take place, when you come up with the idea. That kind of put things together, and when we have more of that, liveliness and understanding and appreciation of what it happens, as if appreciating the life's process itself, that would strengthen our foundation, and the synthetic process and the neuron system developed accordingly, because we start to use that or depend on that kind of system, which may also link to the subconscious part of who we are. Because the life's energy and how it prevailed cannot be understood consciously, but the body and whatever, the heart and the lungs and whatever happening, has that information. And when they feel good, because mind operation can connect to the body operation, and that's the psychosomatic issues of the, if you are busy in mind, the body may suffer. So that's not healthy. So the synthesis has to have an integration of all of that. That's the meaning of synthesis. And it is the synthesis of multiple disciplines and the doctrines and the logic of the brain, as well as connecting to the heart and body system, health system, biological system. And that's the whole of, let's call it, our existence. So that the tree analogy, how we develop this root and the trunk and the branches and leaves and all connected, to respond to the stimuli, the hurdles and the difficulties in the nature of the, whatever they face as trees. We do the same thing, and more we are good at doing that and strengthen that trunk and the nerve system and the branches and synthetic process, including the health and also in the process of your relationship, work, hobby, financial difficulty, whatever you address and promote, and living truthfully and sincerely connected to your being. That's the name of the game, I see it. So where did I start? Actually, I don't remember anymore. How we live with all the things that happens within us and around us, utilizing the best of what we can and make sense out of it. I think that's the theme. And I think I have this vision that I describe to make that happen with idea-wise, the concept-wise of connection and synthesis. And in terms of the practice, I mentioned a PDCA, CAPD, but also use the word calm and quiet mind to have some time and for the reflection and settle all those scattered logic and ideas. Instead, all those different ideas are, living on their own, like within me, like a mini-me. But the mini-me A and mini-me B and C and D and the health system and the rest, all of those mini-me's are to be having some connection with each other, like a customer and suppliers among those neurons and the entities of mini-me's. And that can be promoted. Or should I say, that should be promoted. And we have to find a way to do that. How we do it? The answer that I talked in the other video is calm and quiet mind. Let me just say one example from Zen and close this video. I was just thinking of one phrase, they call it Zen koan, paradox or whatever you call it, that they talk about. And that example was something like when the man, I think Taizen was his Japanese name, a monk was going across the river. Maybe you heard about it. And then he helped the woman by picking up and went across. And the guy with him thought that is not so good because as monk, you're not kind of touch women. I don't know in those days, but there's some way to train themselves so that you can be like in a secluded environment without contact to the world, so that you can focus on this calm and quiet mind. So from that point of view, it didn't make sense. But in reality, you don't live with calm and quiet mind, environment forever. You live in the world, and you need to address things using your brain, not just living in the calm and quiet and be there. So when you have a trip like that and have occasion, this monk, Tanzan or whatever, he did that, and the guy next to him was confused about the practice. So after a while, he asked, "Why did you do that?" And the answer from this monk is something like, "Oh, you are still carrying that woman in your mind." So the point, you may get it, is that the guy who has carried the woman is moving on. What he did was related to his view of the world, which is to help himself and help others, doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is to help someone who is in need. So for that was important, and he felt right about doing it, right? So he, after passing through the river, he just went on. But the other guy was concept-driven, if you call it. The brain-wise, he thinks that this is not the thing to do as monk. So he kind of suffered to figure out what's the gap in between what the guy who is seen to be the master is kind of violating the sila, or the moral conduct, that may be defined to run the temple. So he finally asked the question and he got the answer. So the point of this story is that, well, if I want to explain it, we are living in the now, and there are lots of reference points in our life, and you pick those reference point memories and things to do, even though you may have bad memory or good memory, whatever, but you have synthesized and do the right thing at each moment in life. And you move on accordingly. But this other guy, sort of concept-driven, too righteous in his view of the world, is always checking with the law, and it's kind of like a bureaucracy, and not so flexible, and because things are not synthesized in his mind, to argue that, okay, you are doing something, but you're not supposed to do, kind of argument. So he's correct in certain aspect, but not correct in the pragmatic aspect of making sense of life. Well, I think that's enough. And I don't know if that was a good example, but I think if I were to summarize and say something as a key message, of course, we want to live every moment. It's a moment-to-moment practice to do the right thing, making sense of it and do the best we can. Hopefully, that is in line to your liveliness, that you can connect. That is not in just the brain and the logic part, but from the heart and body, so that there's alignment in what you do. And the situation changes so that memory is stored, but you don't need to hang on to it because the life goes on. So the practice from the point of view of learning how to live is to capture those elements here and there, and then you need to, within yourself, because you cannot ask all those questions as you live and to resolve it, but you have to have a moment to resolve, and it's the continuation of such a process based upon what I call calm and quiet mind. You can call that as a process of a meditation, but the meditation here is not just in the controlled setting, in sitting meditation, but the day-to-day, moment-to-moment throughout your life. Hope there's something meaningful to make sense out of this discussion and bring it to work in your life. I'll do the same. Thank you.